So that's failure, right? I couldn't get it down, right?
Yeah, that's
All right, what about if I really train hard? Ready?
You had all that left?
Is that failure? That's 4 extra reps, right?
Oh my God.
Coach Greg, in today's video, science is bullshit. And I'm not kidding, I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating. It's based on lies, on withholding the truth, and I'm going to prove it. With the Twin Towers coming down, Mike Israetel and Jeff Nippard, we've now realized that science is what you make of it, that you can cherry pick science and make it say whatever you want. And so I'm going to be going back 6 years ago, of which Mike Israetel debates Lyle McDonald, and they're talking about volume. How many sets do you need to build muscle? Remember, Jeff Nippard, the science-based lifter, the comment deleter. Get ready in the house, gonna make him a believer, Jeff Nippard. He used to say you had to do more sets than last time. That it was all about leaving a few reps in the tank, 1 to 3, that you shouldn't train harder than last time. Only thing is, for years, I told him that he was wrong, that he wasn't training hard enough, and eventually he tried what I was saying, and he made an experiment on himself, going against what science actually said. And lo and behold, he makes a brand new training program where he says to train 50% as much as he used to. Where's the science, Jeff? I mean, did you not make a career of being a science-based lifter, a spreadsheet believer? Program switcher, data glitcher, won't take a picture. Not only that, I'm going to show you myself, in fact, I've already recorded the video, showing you how to perform sets, for example, 1 rep in reserve, training to failure and training beyond, and how it's impossible for the studies to actually study what they've been looking for. I don't care if they use Jeff Nippard's research facility. I don't care if Mike Israetel pays off some guy to do the study. I don't care about any of these things. You can't study what they're trying to conclude. Every study goes for a certain length of time. It's typically 8 weeks or 12 weeks, 16 weeks, maybe. That is not long enough to accurately see if one training program is better than another. Here's the problem. When you do a lot of volume, for example, 50 sets of biceps, there's going to be a lot of swelling. Your muscle gets inflamed. You perhaps are releasing more cortisol. You're going to retain more water. And so whether you measure the bicep with a tape measure or whether you use a DEXA scan, which we know is not accurate, DEXA scans are used to measure bone density, not to see how much muscle you put on. Or even if you're doing body fat percentage, a lot of things can change unrelated to how much muscle you're putting on. And so just because the study said you put on more muscle, did it really? Or could it have just been inflamed? Or were you retaining more water? The testing methods are not accurate. An in-body scan, think of it. You're going to say that you put these people to train one way and these people train another way for a month. For example, when they used my Turk Builder Max, and they did it for a month, 1 pill a day, and he used an in-body scan to see if one group put on more muscle than the other, and they said, oh, it's not statistically significant. And so for those of you not versed in statistics, you have no idea how moronic this actually is. To put 2 groups with about 13 participants and then have them do an in-body scan, which is not even close to being accurate, it's as accurate as saying, hey, 5-year-olds looked at me and guessed my body fat in my before and after, and these 5-year-olds said I got significantly leaner. I went from 18% to 15%. That is how accurate the in-body scan is. And so what's the point of doing a test if it's not accurate? You're thinking, yeah, but they used the DEXA scan. It's also not accurate. If they used an MRI, hey, now we're talking, but how many people can afford that? An MRI scan. Not even Jeff Nippard, with the millions of dollars he's making from Macrofactor and so on, not even Jeff Nippard himself has an MRI scan. Don't get me started on those before and after transformations. You know, the ones where millions of followers they have and they do a 30-day transformation, 90-day transformation. In the before photo, you know what? We're going to let the tape go a little bit loose around the waist. Oh, wow, 32 inches, right? Was it really 32 or was it 30? Or was it 34? Was it an inch higher or lower? It's very easy to cheat. Same with skin fold calipers. If I move the calipers even a half a centimeter, it could be significantly higher or significantly lower. And don't get me started on whether the study is blinded or unblinded. How do we know? If the people doing the research know who's in which group, they can have a bias. For example, I want this group to train to 3 reps in reserve. How do they know they train to 3 reps in reserve? What's that based on? The person observing? Yep, stop. You had 3 reps in reserve. And then they do a study. And you trained to failure. Yep, failure, got it. How do we know that that was 1 to 3 reps in reserve? And how do we know that that was actually to failure? Because you watched them fail? You watched them stop pulling that bar down? Great timing. Let me show you for myself. I'm demonstrating, and imagine the person with the camera who's Mepsogram, that would be my trainer. Saying, Coach Greg, I want you to train to 1 rep in reserve.
So you've heard train 1 to 3 reps in reserve. That's not hard enough. I always say train harder than last time. I'm going to show you what does saving 1 in the tank look like, what does failure look like, and then what does actually training hard look like. And so let's see. All right, you're doing your set. I'm close, right?
Did that not look like I had 1 rep in reserve? Yeah, look accurate. And so if I'm in the study, they would have said perfect set, great training intensity. You did exactly what you should do. Another study. Let's go to failure.
Yes.
We'll see. So that's failure, right? I couldn't get it down, right?
Did that look like I trained to failure? I'm thinking yes. Great job, Coach Greg. You trained to failure. This is exactly what we want in the study. Only was it till failure?
What about if I really train hard? Ready?
You had all that left?
Is that failure? That's 4 extra reps, right?
How hard could I actually train? For $1,000 a rep, do you think that I'm stopping right there? For $1 million, if my life depended on it, how many more reps could I go? You need 5 more. Is it possible? It's failure. I couldn't possibly get another rep, right? Wrong.
Oh my God. Jeez.
Was that failure?
Yes.
Let's see. And so, when I hit failure, my warm-up was done. But y'all think you're training hard. Train harder than freaking last time, and then you'll make some gains.
And so can you see, if I cheat even a little bit of body English, little bit of stretch, little bit of rebound, and I can train harder than last time. And so which person A, B, or C, do you train like most? Person A, that's how Jeff Nippod trained for years, only even easier. It looks hard. I was approximating failure. I didn't have 3 reps in reserve, did I? I was near failure. If you're training like that, based on science, 10 to 20 reps per week for any given body part. If I train like that all the time, I'm sure I could probably handle 15, 20 sets, no problem. Or maybe it could be 50. I mean, new research said you need to do more sets. It didn't say may need more volume. It said need more volume. Lyle is debating Mike. Mike is like a politician. He's dancing around the topic. Lyle, he understands statistics. I can tell. Mike, he doesn't understand it. And so he simply agrees, he goes along with it. Mike, very good. He could have been a politician. Despite all the science, Jeff did one experiment on himself once and flip-flopped in his entire ideas despite having read for years, perhaps a decade, to do more volume. Sample size uno. I've been training for 40 years, trained thousands of athletes. I knew you didn't need to do 54 sets. I knew you didn't need to do 20, that it depended on how hard you were training. Do you think there's a given body part where I do 10 to 20 sets per week? It's way too much. Why? Because I train like person C. In the 3 examples, I train hard. Pass failure. I can't handle that. Do you really think that there's somehow 50 volunteers that show up to some study for 8 weeks and the trainer said, hey, I want you to train like Coach Greg. You got to train that hard. Ready, go. Not everyone can train that hard. Some people can. Eric Janicki, most certainly he can do it. Ian Valère, absolutely. Several pros, guys from the past, Dorian Yates, Mike Menser, these guys, they trained very, very hard. And so why do you think Mike Menser said, you don't need all that volume? You got to go all out. Harder than last time, which is what I named my company on. Harder than last time. And so, Jeff, it wasn't because I wanted to make fun of you for not training hard enough. It wasn't because you were injured and you couldn't train your back to failure. It wasn't because of that. It's because for decades I've been train harder than last time.
And the thing is that there is no perfect study. All studies are sitting somewhere on a spectrum.
They vary and range from being completely useless to pretty freaking good. What makes them pretty freaking good? We need to design the study properly up front. We need the MCID, minimally clinically important difference. And so without that, what actually is the purpose of the study? Most of the time, there's going to be no statistically significant difference. There's not enough difference to make a conclusive statement that one is better than the other, whether that's doing more reps or fewer reps, training harder versus training easier, whether the supplement built more muscle or it didn't. The results are oftentimes so small that you need a massive sample size, perhaps 100 or 1,000 even participants, and not for 8 weeks, but for perhaps 8 months or even 8 years. And so just because the study points to one conclusion, it doesn't mean it's accurate. And so, for example, when Jeff Nippard reduced his training volume in half, he did this. He stated he got stronger and built more muscle, but that's for a brief period of time. Before any powerlifting competition, do you know what all of us do? We train easier, with less volume, with less intensity. And do you know what happens because of that? We peak for a meet. We get stronger and lift more weights. And so if we did a study for 2 weeks, do you know what we would conclude? That doing less intensity and less volume builds more strength than training hard. It would be proven. You need to take a deload. If you train harder than last time all the time, you're not going to be as strong because your body's tired. It hasn't fully recovered. And so before a powerlifting competition, or before I do a triathlon or a bike race or anything with a significant amount of effort, we have to go easier. It's known as a taper. This is what we all do. It allows us to peak on meet day to lift at our best. Now, if you extend that deload, you know what happens? You won't improve. You need to continue to train harder than last time. But for brief periods, going easier, it's going to allow you to perform better. And so just because a study 8 weeks long said more volume is better than less volume, doesn't mean that it's true. And if you want to prove anything, you can't have a sample size that's so low with so few participants, with coaches and trainers that don't know what they're doing, using measuring devices that don't measure what they're supposed to be measuring. You really think that a DEXA scan or an in-body scan can detect somebody growing 1.1 pounds of muscle versus someone growing 1? Because let's be honest, in a month, if somebody trained one way and put on 1 pound of muscle and training a different way, they put on 1.1 pound of muscle, do you know how sensitive the test has to be to accurately determine that? If you have 20 training one way and 20 training the other, and one puts on 1 pound of muscle, and the other group puts on 1.1, the result's going to be statistically insignificant. Does that mean it wasn't significant? Does that mean it didn't work? Of course not. It might have been working better. But you can't prove it because there wasn't enough people. But if there were 1 million people, and it was 1 pound and 1.1, and it was done for a year, rather than saying, hey, it's just 1 month, and they repeated the study the next month, the next month, the next month. Wow. You know, consistently, every single month, this group gained 10% more muscle than that group. We conclude that it's better. What if you gave them a supplement that caused water retention? Imagine I had a pill that was a diuretic, but it also built muscle at the same time. Imagine if Turk Builder Max helped you to build more muscle, but caused you to look leaner at the same time. It dried you out, in other words. What would that look like if you, for example, did it for 1 month? In comparison to placebo? Well, let's say it helped you to put on 4 pounds of muscle in a month. That is very, very amazing. That is truly remarkable. 4 pounds in a month is stupendous. But what if at the same time it caused you to have 2 pounds less water retention, aka you were drier, you looked leaner? What would happen is the scale weight would go up too, but you would look leaner. You would look harder. exactly the way you would want to look in competition. Let's compare that to the placebo. The placebo, you put on 1 pound of muscle. Why? Well, because you're training. It's normal. And so group 1 puts on 1 pound of muscle. Group 2 with Turk Builder Max puts on 2 pounds of muscle. You do the measurement tests, you do the in-body scan, the DEXA scan, and so on. And lo and behold, this one went up 1 pound more than that. 1 pound gain versus 2. Do you really think that that's going to be a statistically significant difference? Group A put on 1 pound, Group B put on 2. It's not enough. Unless you had 1,000 participants, it's not enough. And so when you get Group A with 15 people and Group A gained 1 pound and Group B gained 2, it's going to say no statistical significant difference. Does that mean it didn't work? Absolutely not. And so do you see how science is bullshit? Do you see how it makes no sense? You can't just listen to a study, read it, and go to a conclusion, say, oh, it didn't work. No statistical significance. It means nothing.
So, like many features of study design, the strengths and weaknesses are relative. So are the stats in this study perfect? No, absolutely not.
The statistics on these studies are not perfect. Essentially, they're not good enough. They don't allow us to analyze critically what we're trying to look at. And so you can't rely on a study. And I'm going to give you some information that you are probably not aware of. Oftentimes, supplement companies that are worth millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions, some pharmaceutical companies, they will do the study 10 times over and publish the best results. Because if you repeat a study 10 times over, eventually one of them is going to be amazing. And so picture this. You give everyone Turk Builder Max. You get 20 participants, Group A versus Group B placebo. And you test measurements all throughout the body. Bench press max, squat max, deadlift, shoulder press, clean and jerk, you name it. You do x-ray, you measure the body, measure the waistline, the chest, the strength, everything. You do blood work and you go over all the data. Perhaps you tested 100 things. And then you publish the top 3. Well, those who took this, their bench press went up 20% in comparison to placebo, who only went up 10%. And so that's 10% better. Wow. They show and cherry pick what they want you to see and hide the rest. Now remember, Dr. Antonio, when he did the study on Turk Builder Max, he wanted me to pay him $200,000 in secret and not tell anyone. Do you know that? Perhaps it's the first time you're hearing about this. And so I refused. And so what did he then do? He gave the participants 1 pill for a month, never told them to train, and did an in-body scan to see if they made improvements, and then concluded it doesn't work. You may, in fact, hate me. You don't like my voice. You don't like my videos. You think I'm an asshole. You think I'm a grifter, a liar, a snake oil salesman. You can think whatever you want. But does that sound fair? If you can try to look impartially, unbiased, and analyze the study and say, what does it really say? You need to be able to think and analyze critically and understand the bias of the study. I can do that. Perhaps you aren't experienced with this, you haven't practiced this, but when I read studies, I can very quickly see the problems in the study design, the fact that it could be cherry-picked, and that just because it says there's no statistical significance, it doesn't mean that there is not.
When you take a look at all of them together, are basically sufficient for guarded tentative inferences, and they're right on par in the field for what is for stat stickness.
You see how Mike Isertel is using a word salad? Do you actually understand anything that he's saying? He dances around the topic. He bamboozles you. He has a very good vocabulary, and he's like a politician. I am direct and to the point. I tell you exactly what I think without using big words, and I'm simply open, honest, and transparent. I'm not deleting comments. I'm not changing my attitude, my thoughts, my opinions. I'm telling you what I think based on what I've studied, based on my master's, not my PhD. I didn't have an amazing PhD thesis like Mike Isertel, but I did study in school and I did have the highest GPA. Not that that matters. It actually does. It proves that I worked my ass off to understand this. I have experience, an IFBB Pro card, 59 competitions, 42 of which were natural, and I've coached thousands of athletes. And so when I say, I'm telling you what I think, I do believe that it means something. And so if I say this study that says this, it's not really accurate. You can't put all your weight in it. Just because Jeff Nippod threw out a bunch of graphs saying you need to train with more volume doesn't mean that he's actually correct. He claims to be a science-based lifter, but he's a dropout dentista. You all know this about Jeff Nipa. He's a dropout dentista. Jeff Nipa, science-based lifter, dropout dentista. He doesn't have a PhD, he doesn't have a master, he doesn't have exercise science. He's a bro who works out and read some studies and posted some graphs and said this graph et al. And et al. Said et al. Means nothing at all. Everyone is different. And just because a study says you should do this many sets or this many reps or this much weight doesn't mean that it's true. It perhaps means on average, for the average person, perhaps within one standard deviation of the mean, perhaps it's best for them. But what if you're an outlier? What if you're on steroids or SARMs? What if you're an advanced lifter? What if you don't enjoy training that way? Everything is important. And so what you need to do is read, learn, understand, and then put it into practice on your own. Jeff Nippard finally did so. I think he's 34 years of age. And he said, you know what? I'm going to start doing what Coach Greg said. I'm going to try it out. And so he's been doing fewer sets with more intensity. And now he's changing what he believes. For years, he promoted the science. Science this, science that. He's now changed the science. You know what? I think if you're in a calorie deficit, that the science doesn't work out. You know, I'm an exception because I don't have as many calories and so I have to do fewer sets. That is something a bro would say. It's bro science he's explaining. And so the next time you see a science-based lifter quote science, ask yourself, is it actually science? Is it actually true? What would Coach Greg say? What would Coach Greg think? Go and read the article and try to find the holes in the study. What could also be explained? And so that's enough yapping from myself. If you're interested in Turk Builder Max, Turk Platinum, go to my website, code Greg 15% off. And of course, if you want to get your blood work done, you can go to AlgaRx for significantly cheaper prices than other companies like Merrick Health. You can get your blood work and they can prescribe you Tadalafil, Cialis, Telmisartan, Ozempic, Tirzepatide. Remember, these are prescription medications from pharmaceutical companies. And so it's legit. It's from a doctor. It's not underground. It's 100% pharmaceutical. And so if you're interested in that, code Greg 10% off. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the album. Please like the video if you liked it. Remember, this is not all just drama. This channel is to educate and inspire. Don't forget to watch one of those two bloops and of course the cookbooks, training books, coaching plans by me and my team. And until next time, I am out.